It's nice,
All right, so I'm here with young Paris. Thank
What's
you so
up?
much for being here today.
Yes, sir.
I saw your
Yeah.
birthday just passed recently. Happy
Yeah.
belated birthday.
Thank you so much.
Your birthday's on September 13th and my birthday's on September 12th.
Oh, you're Virgo.
Yes.
Wow.
You know Virgos do it best.
Of course.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I know a lot of people don't like to play into that whole astrology thing, but I just feel like it's undeniable that
Yeah.
we Virgos have like a predisposition to success.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Michael Jackson.
Absolutely.
Look at Beyonce. Look at Kobe Bryant,
21 Savage,
young Paris,
Young Paris.
right? So
Yeah.
you are a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
You're Congolese, born in Paris but raised in New York.
Yeah.
So you must have had a very interesting upbringing with
yeah.
the influence of all those different cultures, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, growing up in Paris, I was very young in Paris. We moved here when I was 7, but obviously, like seeing the extreme difference in culture from being in Europe to US was pretty crazy. But I still identify as an African that was born in Paris and kind of settled in New York.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up as an African in America? Because I know a lot of us, we go through, getting bullied and getting picked on and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was the African booty scratcher. We all relate to that, you know. Most of my childhood was pretty, it's interesting, I was talking to my buddy about this the other day, like the black kids actually made it rougher for me growing up. Yeah, like it was more of this dynamic of like being confused because I'm like, you're black and how am I like the enemy? Whereas like the white kids kind of accepted me. So I don't know, I was living in Long Island and we moved to upstate New York. Yeah. But again, I think my biggest childhood trauma being African was more like getting picked on by black kids. And then, I had my few that I would get along with and we kind of got to understand each other. But definitely that was like a sting for me, like being an African growing up. But for the most part, like we were like traditional Africans. Like my family was wearing traditional regalia. We used to wear like real Congolese get-ups, like dashikis. And my mother was like a super African-American woman who married an African guy. So yeah, it was definitely like we were that African family. Yeah. And we would do like performances at our schools, like auditorium stuff and get picked on. So it was like really made us stand out. And I would say to kind of speed it up, like maybe around 14 was the first time that I was like, yo, this is just who I am and I'm proud of it. This is my family, this is how we dress, this is how we eat. And I just learned to embrace and celebrate my culture.
I love it. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting too to have that duality about you where like the culture that you're experiencing at home that's being passed down to you by your parents is completely different from the one that you're experiencing outside of the home. And I have experience with that too. And I relate to that on many levels. And I think it shapes you into a very well-rounded person who's able to exist and function in any environment because we're used to like transforming ourselves culturally, And I know that both your parents were also dancers, which I think is really cool for me. I used to be a ballet dancer, I saw that your father founded the Congolese National Ballet, which is so cool to me. And I think for you as an artist, that's really cool because you had parents who were in the arts. So I bet you grew up with a great appreciation for it.
Yeah, again, I mean, like having parents who didn't have traditional 9-to-5 jobs. My parents were entrepreneurs, so when we first moved to the States, we would take trains from Long Island to Brooklyn and sell like paintings that my father made from like his traditional paint, like these kind of montages of African landscapes. He would paint from like micro $5 portraits to like giant pieces. And if you go out to New York or different areas in African communities, you'll see like how they set up and put their paintings up. And my father was one of those guys. My mother was like the salesman, so they did it all together. And as kids, we would run around and help our parents, like painting $5, $10, like. But again, like growing up with that extreme dynamic of having like an arts-rich family who had to come here and figure out the American way, like how to make money, how to have something of value and put that into a marketplace. And me being a kid, like watching my parents naturally hustle. So it was definitely like this romanticized, beautiful African dance, traditional kind of ballet storyline, but at the same time it was like an extreme struggle of trying to figure out how to make a living off of that. So I watched these extremes, and it really just made us all tighter, like you're saying, being like oppressed by the other kids, knowing that we only have each other, being so different, it kind of makes you feel like, we only have us, so we might as well.
It's a community for sure.
Yeah.
How do you think that your multicultural background or identity influences your music?
I mean, for me, I think my sound is like, it's like a mix of where I'm from, right? So you hear like some electronic vibes, you hear like that New York energy, but it still has an African punch to it. And it's really just my upbringing. Like the sounds that attracted me the most was one, African music, primarily West African. Growing up listening to Nigerian artists, Fela, to traditional artists from my country in Congo, like Papa Wemba, Kofi Olomide. Like this gave me an identity, even though I was living in another country. And I think as Africans who live in America, it's also a different dynamic than Africans in Europe, because there's much more of a connection. They know where they're from. They take these trips back and forth. But us, a lot of us are first and second generation, and we have like a long distance from our people. So you really need these like moments to make you feel like you're at home. So whether it's how your parents decorate the house or how you dress or the music you listen to, for me it was like, let me add these elements of these foreign things that I identify with, but make it into music. So at the time, I like to credit myself for really making this Afrobeat shit what it is, like in the States. Because, when the Wizzes and the DeVitos of the world were like still small guys coming to the States, like I kind of saw this identity and I'm like, yo, let's make a whole vibe out of this shit. Fast forward, I ended up getting signed, but to help put that sound and that vibe into mainstream pop culture. So I guess to answer your question, yeah, for me it's like, I'm always gonna be this American vibe that comes from African depth, but also has like a European romantic kind of vibe.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw you did a freestyle on Burna Boy and Byron Messiah's Taliban.
Yeah.
And that kind of had like a dance hall, like Jamaican vibe to it, which I really liked, but I thought it was interesting because I know you and I had the discussion about you not wanting to feel like you were placed in a box in terms of the kind of genre of music that you make. So how have you gone about positioning yourself in the music industry with that?
I mean, it's funny you said that because, well, my ex-girlfriend was West Indian. She was from St. Vincent. And it's funny, like I took a trip out there for 2 months and I embraced so much of that Caribbean culture. And like the patois and how they move, how they talk, that just became also a part of like, I'm one of those sponges till this day. I'm still a kid at heart. Like I still see things and I become it and I add it to my sauce. So another thing that we talked about off camera was like, like it's best to actually stay in a lane when you're thinking about it from a business aspect, because people they know what to expect. But it's also not very easy when you're creative because you're coming from all these different palettes, different colors, and you're like, how do I also give some of that energy that I feel when I want to create? And it's like, it's not easy to stay in a lane, even though it might be better for business, but I'm always gonna be like a reflection of what's affected me the most. So that remix in particular, I'm a fan of Burna Boy. When Burna was first coming to New York, we would link up in situations. So again, it's also me kind of paying a homage to the guys who are really killing it in Afrobeats right now.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. I know that you're working on a project right now.
Yeah.
So tell us about your upcoming album. What is it about? What's the influence behind it?
Yeah, I'm working on an album. I'm kind of trying to tell a little bit more of my personal life with this one. I've been making some groovy music for my last couple albums, but I kind of wanted to get a little bit more in depth with like, who is Young Paris? How do I think? What do I identify with? And a little bit more on a personal, lyrical level. Also my experiences, like I live a pretty interesting life. I know some pretty interesting people. Like some of my guys are, can't pay $500 for rent, but I have billionaire friends. I might be on a yacht. I might be in a hood somewhere. So, you know, I kind of just wanted to create this ambiance of what it feels like to be a kid who can relate to, you know, some ground level street stuff, but also can be in a room with some super high level people and be just as comfortable. So the sound is very sexy. It's kind of it's romanticizing Africa. I'm always into this message of like romanticizing the African experience. So, you know, it speaks of the beauty of our women, of our culture, the potential of our lifestyles. Like I would love for more people of color to see and do some of the things that I get to do. But overall, it's just like it's some sexy music. I mean, I've been getting in a little bit of trouble lately, you know, with the ladies.
Oh, how
And,
so?
You know,
Because I know you told me that you wanted to talk about loyalty
Yeah.
and matrimony in your album. So tell me, where are you going with that?
I
Let's
mean,
talk about that.
You know, I think since COVID a lot made us kind of stay at home. It kind of pulled us back from being able to create and be out there. So at the time, I was so focused on my work, I was just too busy to kind of play around. And with COVID, it kind of became like a free vacation period for me. So I was running around the world, living in Arizona and Mexico, dealing with different women. I ended up having a kid, you know, crazy stuff. And you know, more recently, I got in a little trouble. I'm in a little bit of court right now from dealing with a married woman, like some crazy stuff where, you know, I've kind of been in these romantic, dark tales, and like it's like I'm just being attracted to these women who, you know, have a whole life situation, but I'm so into them, and it keeps happening.
Okay.
So it's like I'm almost having this fetish for like married women.
What?
Yeah.
You're having a fetish for married women.
Yes,
Okay, so
becoming
let's
like
get
that.
into that because I really want to talk about how a lot of the times I think a lot of rappers and artists love to talk about loyalty in their music.
Yeah.
But they'll be the main ones cheating, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I want to go back into talking about this idea of putting your actual life experiences into your music.
Yeah.
So how are you implementing that, you know?
I mean, it's challenging because, like, I don't know, man. To be super extreme, I don't know why the message right now is making me bring up R. Kelly, but I think you reach certain levels of success, or like. Like you get to levels in life where you get to do so much of something that you get bored and you're like curious about other things. The reason I'm thinking about R. Kelly, I think, is because he took it to an extreme to be like a child, you know, to have his interest in young women. But, you know, I think that there's this nuance where you want to kind of play with your vices when you reach the level where what's the norm for you is what's crazy to everyone else is like the norm for you. And I guess it could be a power trip, it could be narcissistic. But I don't know, I kind of just dove into a vice where I was like, yo, you know, I'm finding these women that I'm dealing with, and it's like, yeah, but I have this, and I'm like, really? And then we're going back and forth, and I'm curious, and it's like, yeah, but I have this thing, and he's like this, and then I kind of want to know the psychology of what they're going through, and then she tells me this, and then I kind of, it almost allows me to like play with my bad boy energy and see how far I can go, and it's become like super interesting rather than meeting this, because I don't know, I think when you're in our line of work, you know, there's a lot of you kind of deal with the same type of women, you know. It's like she's like a fan, or you know, she already knows who you are, she already Googled your net worth, or you know, and I don't know, for me it's become so repetitive that I'm like, what's going to drive me with my interest in women? And that's definitely become...
So that's become married women for you.
Yeah, it could be a temporary
in
thing.
In a crazy, twisted way that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like I could understand when you've experienced everything, it's like, okay, what's next? Like what's actually new for me?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take it back, because you also mentioned talking about the beauty of our women in your music.
Yeah.
So I feel like I want to have a conversation about this idea that I think a lot of African women gravitate towards Afrobeats music instead of rap music or trap music,
Yeah.
because the way in which the artists speak about women or describe women or their relationships with women
Yeah.
tends to be more respectful,
Yeah.
you know, in Afrobeats music than it is in rap music.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? And do you think about that when you make your own music?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, like, I can get into some deep shit with that response. I think for me, like, when I look at the marketplace, because I have this whole business thing going on, like I'm doing my MBA, and I kind of look at the world totally different now, especially in the business of music. But
Yeah.
if you look at the American consumer of black music, it's primarily young white kids. And if you look at who consumes Afrobeats or cultured music that's from areas like Africa, it's mostly for their own people. So, you know, when you're kind of reflecting your own identity on your own people with the intent to uplift, the message is going to be a lot more positive and graceful, which is when you hear Afrobeats music. It's just more about a vibe, and this is how we celebrate and enjoy each other. But I feel like America is so destructive, and I think the white kid wants to hear, you know, the black people destroying themselves so much that's become like, you know, the buying point for the consumer, where it's like, it's not that interesting to hear black people talk about, you know, all this good stuff that they like to do with each other in this destructive country that's filled with guns. It's like, we rather hear the shit that gets the alarms going, where it's like, yo, he really did that, he really killed this guy. And I'm not speaking down on white people as a whole. When you look at the numbers and you look at the marketplace and you understand, you know, that we have to create content that is providing wealth to our industry. And when you think about who's buying into the wealth, who's buying into the storytelling, what they tend to buy into is this type of storytelling. 100%. And who the buyer is ends up being this type of buyer. So, you know, most artists who are the most gangster artists in the world, if you have a one-on-one conversation with you, they'll still tell you like, yo, I don't want to always be talking about this shit, but this is what they want.
And half the time they're not really living.
At all. They don't. I know half of these guys, about. Right? But again, it's like, as an artist, you're in there and you're like, okay, the label's putting pressure on me. The industry's putting pressure on me. It's like my first week sales are this XYZ. Even like some of the greatest artists in the world, I see this first week sale thing, and it's like, this artist only sold 20,000 copies their first week. It's like, yeah, but look at how big their white fan base is, because these black kids ain't buying that music. And it's like, again, when you start to look at the data and you start to understand who's buying what, it tells you a lot of the storytelling and why that type of content is being directed the way it is. So for me, it's like, it makes a lot of sense that when you hear African music and Afro beats that's designed and made for us, it's a lot more about love and positive and vibes and creation and self-celebration. But obviously, if your consumer is the kid who wants to hear you destroy yourself, you're gonna make that type of music. So, and of course, we celebrate it as well. We like that gangster shit. We like that ratchet shit. I think it's in us. I think we still have a tribal-esque accent to our way of doing things. Like, we see someone, we might be automatically intimidated, or we might feel like, you know, my shit is a little more juicier than them. But I like the competition nature of black culture, but I think sometimes the destruction for me is where it gets, you know, toxic, uncomfortable. Yeah, because it's like, I'm American enough to know why that's attractive, but I'm African enough to also know why that's not necessary. And it's like, we need, you know, the Afrobeat shit that's the vibe for us. Like, and I love seeing the American artists who are like, yo, I'm just gonna fuck with the African vibes and try to add some of that to my sauce.
Yeah, definitely. I brought that up because I know that you started the whole like hashtag Melanin Monday trend on Instagram, which is obviously a very uplifting message that you were spreading to the world. And you have always been an advocate for black models and an ally to black women in general. And I think that's very significant because you don't see black men doing that, you know, a lot of the time. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, Melanin Monday, I still have this dream, man. Maybe one of you ladies out there, I'm trying to find a woman who wants to do like a beauty and hair company and needs a name and a trademark, and I'll probably team up with you and give you Melanin, and we can do it together. Like, I definitely want to turn Melanin into like a beauty brand for people of color. So
Young Paris is looking for someone to endorse. Like, you're hearing this right here, right now.
Yeah, I need that. So, but Melanin, basically when I was really kind of doing my thing on Facebook, like 2014, 13, I'm kind of like, I'm looking at these magazines and I'm seeing these beautiful black models, but then when I look on Instagram or I look online, Facebook, I'm never seeing us being represented in these ways. So for me, it was just kind of, I started by just only posting beautiful black model women. And I got this idea of melanin, like all of a sudden melanin just kind of came across my life. And I was so driven by the word and what it represented, and taking this carbon form scientific subject and making it like a cool theme around how peoples of color can uplift ourselves. So I was like, let's put that next to the models, let's put that next to all peoples of color, and kind of reshape this mental oppression of who we think we are through this white lens. And for me, it was like melanin makes you automatically feel like I'm part of something where my color actually is dope. And I ended up trademarking it and made a brand out of it. And yeah, Melanin Monday is still, there's like millions of hashtags now.
Yeah.
It's like it's crazy how what this thing turned into. But again, it was every Monday. If you guys still want to get on there, we hashtag Melanin Monday. It's just a way of saying like, yo, I'm black and I'm beautiful. And
yeah. I love it. I love it because it really comes across that you respect women, honestly, respect black women. And, I think it's very important for male artists to keep women at the forefront of their mind. Because even Drake said very famously that like making music for girls is the waviest thing you can do. Because I feel like once you get the women on board with your music, then like you've won. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because the guys follow the chicks.
Yeah.
You can't throw a party in the club with a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
If you could get, I think it's free ladies before 11.
Yeah.
You get the ladies in there and the guys follow, and it shows you that women still lead. I mean, I got 4 sisters. My mother's like my icon. I bow my hat. I get on my knees to women, especially the black women, especially the African women. But for me, it's like, as a brother and as someone who also respects my child's mom, as someone who's watched my mother since my father died, hold up a family, and watch my mother hustle and like figure it out and be out there and be loyal to her husband. Like my dad passed 10 years ago and she still would never look at another man. Like her loyalty is beyond. But I think the woman is, excuse me if I offend anyone, but I think the woman naturally suffers more than men, and women are kind of designed to suffer more. And I think, there's something about that suffrage that like a real man admires, because when you look at a woman, you see how much she breaks her back for her family. It's like, yo. And again, I think I try to relate when I say women to those who really carry on, like, they carry their chin high and they stick with their moralities. Like some of these girls out here, straight hoes, like who are, have the traits of women, but I feel like I see so much stuff now, especially on social media and content, where it's like women are making conscious choices to be like, to just have a terrible route in life. And I think, to me, these aren't women. These are like people who are so driven by how social media has shaped them that they become something that's beyond like what we respect as men. And I think this is why there's so many of these male and female arguments about how the man should be and how the woman should be, because things are just getting out of hand. So I mean, that's another conversation.
That is another conversation. But I think it's interesting that you say that those aren't women, though. So you think that certain choices that a woman makes in her life can like invalidate her her womanness?
In a man's perspective, yeah.
Wow.
I think that men, when men identify, I mean, you could say, if we put this in reverse to men, say like, if a woman is seeing a man doing very unmanly things, she says, you're not a man. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're not being a man, like be a man. And it's the same context.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's the same context of saying like, that's not a woman.
Yeah, I've never heard somebody word it like that, but we do say that, like, he's not a man. Yeah,
exactly.
That's a boy, that's not a man, or whatever we'll say.
Right, you're not doing manly things. You're not making me feel like I'm a woman with a man. I mean, it's a play on words, but like in a nutshell, you know what I mean when I'm saying it.
Okay. All right, so I want to bring it back to the beginning stages of your career, because when you signed with Jay-Z's label Rock Nation in 2016, it didn't take long for you to start getting some, like, you know, releasing music with some big Afrobeats artists like Tiwa Savage, Olamide. And I feel like that really placed you at the forefront of the Afrobeats scene. So I just want to know, like, what was that like? What was the process like? Did you meet Jay-Z and he was like, you know, I need you at my label? Or was it, you know, what was it like entering such an exciting industry?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, like, to be honest with you, at the time, I was, you know, my father died a couple years before, and the only way that I could cope with his death was to just create. And I was just doing so much content every single day that I didn't even realize how much momentum I was building. I didn't realize how many fans I had. I didn't realize how much, I didn't just realize, I was so driven to just keep creating so much work that I actually got booked at Brooklyn, it was Brooklyn Museum, first Saturdays. I think there were 5,000 people. It was the biggest concert they ever had there. Wow. And even when I saw how many people came, in my mind, I'm like, why is all these people coming from me? It's crazy, like, because I was doing so much that sometimes you get in such a tunnel vision that you really don't realize like how much impact you're putting out to the world. So ended up being an A&R who's like Jay's right-hand guy, Lawrence Parker, shout out to Law. And he's just like, yo, bro, you know, this is crazy. You know, like this whole Africa shit, like this, the vibe you're doing, the sound, the movement. Like I was really making this Africa shit dope. Like the way we were dressing, the way we were, I mean, people were co-signed for at the time. It was really like, what is this whole Africa vibe? People didn't know about Wizkid, they didn't know about Burna Boy. It was just like, yo, this guy from New York is bringing his culture and making it, like I had the maquillage, my paint, which like I was really just making the tradition be dope in my own vibe. And I was invited to come by the office the week after. He just said, yo, this is the guy who works with the labels, yo, you know, come by the office, we want to have a talk. And I'm like, the office? And he sends me the address and I pull up and I see the paper planes, Rock Nation. I had no idea. He's like, yo, you know, we want to sign you, man. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, you know, I was showing your stuff to Jay and sending him some of your videos and some of the team, and, you know, we're working with this. You know? I
love that.
And within a week, like I signed, I ended up meeting Jay. I think the first time I met Jay, first time I met Jay was at the office. I think, but many times, many situations we would meet, South Africa, weddings, little things like we'd meet up, shake hands. He'd tell me little words. But Jay's a guy that's very. You don't really like to talk about your encounters with Jay. Like everybody who knows Jay knows this, because it's not a thing to brag about, to feel like, yo, I know Jay-Z. It's more like, Jay's more like a big brother kind of OG figure where, you know, he could say 2 words and you're going to stick with that for life. Like the first thing he ever said to me was like, peace, king. And I always remember like, yo, Jay-Z called me a king. Like, I think it was at the Rock Nation brunch. But yeah, honestly, being under that umbrella was really insightful and really powerful for me, because his legacy and reputation and just what Rock Nation has brought to the industry on a business level. And I've always been a guy who's an artist but into business. And what he's brought was always like this essence of like being an artist but also having an entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah. So being around these guys and watching how they move, it wasn't like just being a label with a bunch of interns and music people who think they know music telling opinions. Like, the Rock Nation family, it's more of like everyone's an entrepreneur. All the artists, all the business people in there, everybody talks like friends and brothers and gives advice. People they go out of their job to kind of help you with your area in it. And the artists are helping the A&R sometimes. It's a very like business kind of entrepreneurial space to be around. And I got to know like everyone very quickly and made really good friends there. But honestly, like, you know, I ended up leaving the label after COVID. My contract was up. But honestly, like Rock Nation is one of those places where, like, if any of you artists or anyone out there, you know, if you can intern for this group or get close to some of these people, you'll learn that, like, as far as any labels go, they do it right. Like, you know, when you're there, they're not, their mentality is not to screw artists. They're not there to try to steal your publishing. Like they're not like Jay's like legacy is so rich. Like the way that he, like the seeds that he puts into his employees about independence and ownership, like it's just next level. So
Yeah. That's so wonderful that you had a great experience, because not many people can say the same.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people feel like the Afro is starting to be taken out of the Afrobeats, like with the globalization of the genre. So what do you think about that yourself as an African artist?
Afrobeat is gonna be a tough one for y'all, man. No, I mean, you know, we live in a country that's been known for, you know, people come and they take the music, they make it their own. You know, jazz, rock, classical, hip hop in many ways. And now, like, I don't want to just say white people, but there's obviously been, you know, a colonial, you know, takeover when it comes to genres that were designed by blacks that are not identified as black genres. You know, I also DJ sometimes. I play house music, and when I go to these events, it's like all white guys. And I'm like,
even I had to be educated on the fact that house music
it's black music. It's crazy. It's like black house music is black music. That's not like we jumped in and put a vibe. Like house music is black. Was actually black gay music. And like to think that this sound out of Detroit, New York, Chicago, like that was another just rebellious way of going against, you know, what was the norm, has turned into a thing where even when you're around it as a black person, you feel like this strain. You're like, yo, it's like this white people shit. I'm just here. I'm just trying to drink my little champagne, and like it's like, nah, this is your music. This is your culture. Do your history. It's just something that was taken from us and created in another version. And I don't want to just point fingers, but it is what it is, you know? So again, it's like Afrobeats. I think if people could take it, they would. If there's a way to play with taking this genre, you know, they would find a way. You know, there's moments of it when you see an American and European kind of aspects where there's these attempts to kind of strip it and wash it down. But Afrobeats is a tough one because it's in Africa. So, and over there, it's mostly us. So it's going to be tough to take that sound and make it yours because we really identify with it back home. But honestly, I also believe in collaboration. You know, I think it's beautiful to also see guys like Justin Bieber or, you know, a couple talents out there that are white.
Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran, that you could see that they have a natural way to just, they want to play on it, they want to embrace it and celebrate it and open it to the audience. And obviously that white dollar is important for black business. So you need to have that keep that invitation open. And again, I think people know that when I say white, black, all this shit, I say it in a very tasteful way. I say it also as a business entrepreneur way. I don't try to identify with white as a bad or good thing. It's just what it is when you talk about business. But anyway, you know, we need that. We do need Africa to be open to the bigger buyer, and I think collaboration is the way to go. You see Calm Down with Rema and Selena Gomez. Yeah, she's Latina, but she has a huge white following, and I think these collaborations make our sound and our influence bigger on the world, and also encourages a lot more African artists to create their own music and follow their own trends. So what I like more than anything is seeing so many new Afrobeats artists popping up and creating just doper and doper and doper music, like seeing the trends and how they sway. You know, I remember the Congolese had a crazy thing, then it was crazy Nigeria, then now it's in South Africa. Like with Amapiano, and like, who knows, maybe East Africa is gonna have their wave, but it's definitely like, interesting to see this thing happening in real time because we've like created it. Like the whole Afrobeats era is really our generation. And I remember even prior to it being called Afrobeats, again, you know, I'm just putting my little foot down, but it was called Afrobeat, hence through the legacy of Fela, right? And when I was running around doing interviews, I was like, yo, we should call this thing Afrobeat, so it's kind of like we're all under this umbrella, and I was running to these major platforms.
No way you started that.
Yeah, I swear to God. I mean, if you go to early interviews with the biggest guys, they were still calling it Afro Swing, Afrobeat, Afro this. Afro jazz, Afro pop, and I was the guy in the States saying like, yo, we should call this Afrobeats because it's like all of us doing it under one umbrella.
Yes.
And at the time there was, we came up with this thing called One Africa. Actually, me and DJ Tunes were running, who's the WizKids DJ now, we were running around New York saying, One Africa, One Africa, One Africa. It was a way of saying like, yo, we're gonna do this together. And they actually made One Africa Music Fest. Like, New York has birthed, you know, what we were doing, like, we were birthing again, we were kind of putting stamps on things. Like, this Africa thing, let's do it like this, let's call it this, let's make it this vibe. Of course, the word Afrobeats was still being tampered with in the culture, but I definitely was the guy that was like, yo, this Afrobeats thing means like all of us are together. And I was running to SoundCloud, to Audio Mac, to iTunes, and telling them like, yo, we're calling, before it was even a genre, like, yo, we're gonna call this thing Afrobeats. So again, like to see it all happening in real time, like Rema just got the first MTV award, like the Grammy category just opened this year. Like, this is a very brand new thing that's touching pop culture. And I think we're telling the story in real time.
Yeah.
And it's bigger than the music. You know, the fashion is another aspect where, you know, watching a lot of African fashion designers get their limelight in the space now. You know, the way I came into music was similar to how I came into fashion. I was appointed by Anna Wintour. And I was similar
to Anna Wintour herself.
Yeah. They made me a CFD ambassador, and at the time I was like, this is how we make this shit cool. Like, we mix it up like this. I'm doing my paint, I'm wearing the traditional, but I'm mixing it with the Prada and the Gucci and the Dior. And again, at the time, it was like, yo, we're gonna make this Africa shit dope as hell.
And I can tell that your multicultural identity really manifests itself in the way that you dress, like in your fashion, the same way that it does in your music. And I love that. So I really want to close this interview off by asking you one question. Because as somebody who has actively pushed, you know, for multiculturalism to be at the forefront of music, of fashion, of the metaverse, whatever, like, what message do you want to send to people and share with people about the importance of embracing a multicultural identity?
Yeah, I think, you know, the world is becoming one, you know, where the internet has allowed us all to be connected. I think it's a time now to just travel and go to different places and meet different people. And there's nothing that's more important in education than traveling. Like, when you travel, it humbles you, it reminds you of, you know, your neck of the woods is not the whole world. And honestly, traveling was really what changed it for me, because once I started to see how other people live and what they're able to live with and how they do their thing and how I could take a piece of that and add it to my thing, like that really changed everything. So I would just encourage people to travel. And honestly, I think I would close by saying, like, you know, whatever you're doing, like, just do it. You know, like, do that shit for real. Like, I'm at a point now where I'm kind of charging back up in the game. I'm like, if you're gonna do something, if you're gonna do a podcast, like, do that shit. If you're gonna eat food, like, eat it. If you're gonna fucking drive. Like, if you're gonna make music, like, put your foot down, like, and just go all the way, because we don't have time here to play with this shit. And, you know, I'm really one of the pioneers for Afrobeats. Like, I'm really one of the pioneers for this dope Africa shit. And it really was because I was so passionate that there was no option. There was just do it. Like, keep creating, keep dressing up. My shoes didn't fit. I didn't have the best studios. I didn't have any money, and I was just fucking doing it. And I think all these doubts that we add to why we can't pull it off really hold us back. So, you know, even you doing your work here, it's like, you just gotta pull your coins together and make it happen. And, you know, God has a way of paying us. We don't always get paid through money. We're not always paid in real time, but it comes back for the effort that you put out in the universe. So, you know, if you got an idea, just fucking do it. Just 100%.
Just do it.
Foot on the gas.
Just do it.
It don't gotta be 100%. I'm on some 80% shit now. I'm like, as long as it's 80% good, I'm putting that shit out.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna let the people react to it and see how they like it. And if I need to go back there and remaster and touch it up because they really want that one, then that's what I'll do. I learned that actually from, like, Soulja Boy. I remember, I think he had an interview with one of his hits. Before it was a hit, he just put it out. and it got so much attraction, he went back to the studio and actually mixed it and mastered it and put it out and became a #1 record.
That's a good strategy, yeah.
Why not just put shit out? Like, artists are sitting on thousands of songs. Like, designers are sitting on hundreds of pieces that it's like, it's 95%. It's not perfect. It needs to be this, but you're wasting so much time.
And people love unreleased music. Oh my God.
Imagine hearing another 10 Michael Jackson songs.
Right?
Or another 30
I would
Prince
kill
songs.
for that.
Of course. And it's like, imagine how much work they were like, yo, I'm not gonna, it's just not all the way there. And I think, you know, I just want to encourage creators to just put out more content. And, you know, we're at a content era now where you can't survive off putting out one post a month. Right. It's like, you got to just keep dropping it. And it's like, it doesn't have to be
Consistency.
perfect. Right.
I love that.
So get to work, motherfucker.
Period. Oh my God, I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice chat.
Nice chat. All right, Young Paris, everyone.
Yeah, Tiva Ivana, let's go.
Cheers.
You keep saying that I'm playing while you staying. Say you there for me, then you just gotta care for me. I need a ride or die, you acting like an alibi. Stop being solid and go get yourself another guy.